Stephen A., I actually want to start with you here because you said earlier in the week Louisville was the first domino to fall. What's your reaction to the latest?
I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked at all. And I think there's more information that's going to come out. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Anytime you go after a guy like Rick Pitino and you ultimately nab him for something, even though that didn't involve, the FBI investigation is still ongoing as it pertains to Louisville, obviously. But when you consider some of the things that have happened to a big name like a Rick Pitino, and then you hear the kind of things that you've been hearing coming down the pike, nothing should surprise you at this point. The FBI is involved. This is not about the NCAA. This is the FBI. We all know that the NCAA is the most reactionary commodity maybe ever in existence, for crying out loud. They wait until somebody brings the hammer down to react and all of a sudden play sanctimonious. That's just their M.O. But the FBI doesn't give 2 cents about that, and they're going after everybody. Let's look at the names on this list. Let's pay attention to this stuff. We've got Tom Izzo, because Miles Bridges, when you're talking about Miles Bridges, you're talking about Michigan State. And if you're talking about Michigan State, you're talking about Tom Izzo. Now, that's a problem in and of itself, considering what has transpired with Michigan State. But then you got Calipari. His name is in there. You got Roy Williams for North Carolina. That name is in there because he's North Carolina. And, of course, Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, when you talk about if something happens where Mike Krzyzewski and Duke's basketball program is ultimately implicated to a strong degree, with a strong degree of credibility, I can't imagine what something like this would do to college basketball. Clearly, the belief is by some people out there that this is much ado about nothing, because if it were just one program, that would be different. But because there's a plethora of it, it sort of softens the blow. But I kind of disagree with that from this respect. College basketball is already in trouble. We used to love the season. Now all we seem to care about is March Madness. And anytime further negative publicity comes down the pike, it doesn't help the sport, particularly when some of the big names who are the kind of individuals that are so revered and held in such high regard by the media and the public at large, if they start falling like dominoes too, who knows what this is going to do to college basketball. And that's just where I'm at with it. I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm not surprised at all. And the people who get implicated, make no mistake about it, because the FBI is involved, they're going to start singing. And the Jeff Goodmans of the world and others are going to be boatloaded with information out the wazoo, because everybody's going to be looking to cover their you-know-what. This is just the beginning.
Stephen A., I think you touched on what would be the kind of most salacious stuff about this whole story, is if it implicated ultimately brand name coaches. And you were talking about that, or alluding to it a couple days ago, in fact. That would be like, oh, yes, my God. Now, I understand why people would feel that way. By the way, you could Google Sam Gilbert. You talk about the greatest college basketball dynasty ever with the most upstanding coach, John Wooden, right? Google Sam Gilbert. Tell me what you think about that. How he was a booster for the Bruins back then, and obviously there were improper benefits and all that kind of stuff. Wooden was never implicated. And so if they have a smoking gun here, it remains to be seen whether that smoking gun can be linked to the institutions, not just to an agency who paid players, and then the players wound up at those institutions, and then if that can be linked to the coaches, because the coaches usually have plausible deniability. But that would be the kind of most scandalous thing, I think, to come out of that. But, my general feeling, Jeff, about all this stuff is this is not the corruption. This is a symptom of the corruption. That's why a lot of people get a kick out of it or roll their eyes like, duh, we don't know that players are paid. For example, when Cam Newton, was being courted after Florida, right? Mississippi State was busted, right? On a recording, and I think the number was $180,000, right? He winds up at Auburn. Don't you think most college football fans think, did they get him for free? Not to accuse Auburn of anything, but that's what most fans are thinking. Wait, this place is offering almost $200,000, and he winds up at that place. Was that just for the education or just for the program? So it's not, fans are jaded about this stuff, and that is because the corruption begins when you point a camera at unpaid labor When you point that camera at them and start selling commercial time and charging money for tickets, that is the corruption. After that, it's a symptom of that corruption. And I think people largely see the student athletes, even the agents and the coaches, as actors in that drama, but not as the root causes of the corruption.
Jeff?
You know, there's so much to wrap your arms around, and both of you are right. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg, okay? Now, I will say some of the stuff in this with Andy Miller, the documentation, none of it surprises me because you've got other agents doing similar things, okay? Agents are trying to do what? They're trying to get these players. By doing that, they're paying money. They're paying money to them when they're in high school, when they're in college. But a lot of this information in this document, listen, it's meals. Miles Bridges got $400 for his family. Is that a big deal, Stephen A? At the end of the day, a meal to Wendell Carter's parents? No. It's the big money, and it's the other things that may come out from this investigation. Remember, they wired all of these 10 people that were arrested. They wired for months. What else is going to come out from the conversations between coaches, Christian Dawkins, who was working for Andy Miller at the time, trying to get all these players for Andy Miller, making money off them? What is going to come out with these coaches and Dawkins? That, to me, is going to be what hits hardest. Not what came out today, but what's going to come out through the FBI investigation.